Alrighty, hey guys, so this week's video is me recommending to you some of my favorite Netflix shows or movies that you can watch during quarantine. Yay! So, first of all, I want to put a disclaimer, as per usual, and say that I am from
the Great White North.
So my Netflix is Canadian and I don't know which movies I'm going to be talking about you will be able to access on your Netflix depending where you're from. I'm just going to be going through my Netflix list and letting you guys know some of my favorite movies or shows. So the first show I want to talk about is The Fosters. The Fosters is a really good show. I've watched the entire thing. Because I think one of the reasons I really like The Fosters is basically because of the plot of the show, and it's mainly focuses on like kids or teens. They kind of age throughout the show, so there's a lot of new content as you go through it because they're starting different schools or just kind of like, you know, finding themselves and meeting new people, and that part of it is really interesting. So new characters are always being introduced, which is awesome. But on top of that, The Fosters is a really inclusive show, so I feel like because there's so many characters at so many different age groups in their life and going through so many different things, there's characters that everybody can relate to, and The Fosters also has, you know, very inclusive with like interracial couples, lesbian couples, gay couples, like LGBTQ in general. They're very inclusive about, so I think it's just a really awesome show for anyone to watch. I think you kind of learn a lot about like being more or less judgmental to people and like that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really awesome show. A movie I think would be really cool to watch is 8 Mile. This is a movie about Eminem's life. I watched it and I really liked it. I would totally watch it again. I've been planning to watch it again. It's kind of just really interesting. It's shows you like life in like that kind of environment that he's from. The next movie I would recommend is Room. This movie is really interesting because it is about a girl who is kidnapped. However, unlike most movies about kidnappings where they focus on the entirety of the kidnapping and up until her being rescued, this movie kind of focuses on her being rescued and beyond, which is really interesting, and you see her kind of adapting back to life after being kidnapped, which I thought was really cool. Okay, the next TV show that I really like is Good Girls. This is not a typical show for me. It's kind of like, what I like about Good Girls, it's sort of like a comedy, but also a like drama, I guess. Like there's still very good plot and good content, and you're interested and you're intrigued and you want to know what happens next, but it's also more of like a comedy side, and you can laugh and it's funny, right? It's funny. It's essentially about 3 moms who are all kind of struggling, and they decide to rob a grocery store and accidentally rob a gang leader, and he retaliates and they end up working for him, and it's just really funny and interesting and a different take on like gangs and like a different, I like unique storylines, you know, something that's not cliche I haven't watched before, so it's really good in that sense because it's completely different than anything I've watched before. The next movie I would suggest is Nerve. Nerve is a movie that I saw in theaters. It's just really like, the concept is really cool, it's different, so I've never seen a movie like that. It has really good actors. I think it's Emma Roberts and Dave Franco. Both great actors. Like I said, the storyline is really cool and unique. Essentially, an app is developed or a game, I think it's an app, it might just be a website, where you can join in a game where basically you're either a player or a watcher, and if you're a watcher, you guys dare the players to do different stuff, and they essentially like vlog it of them doing it, and then if they do it, they get more money, and then there's one winner. There's that. But the ending gave me a little plot twist. I was like, whoa, what is going on? But it was really good, like I said, and I highly suggest it. I've watched it a few times. The next movie I would suggest is The Lovely Bones. This movie is really kind of weird a little bit, but it's definitely interesting also. It's basically about a girl who is kidnapped and murdered, and then it's about, again, it's different, sort of like Room, it's different where it doesn't focus on the actual like up into her kidnapping and then them finding her. It focuses on, you do see her kidnapping and like get all that like background information on like how that was going on, but you also see it's about her kind of like watching her family and her life after she dies. Another movie I would suggest is What Men Want. This is really funny. I saw this in theaters with two of my good friends. Essentially, it is about a woman who works in a predominantly male field. Obviously, as a woman working in a predominantly predominantly male field, you tend to be not overlooked, but taken less seriously, etc. And so she kind of struggles with that at work. But then she meets a psychic at a bachelorette party, and she drinks some tea, and suddenly she can hear men's thoughts, and so she uses that to her advantage. And it's really funny, but she also learns a lot about herself and such throughout this movie. Another movie I would suggest is I think Silver Linings Playbook. I think that's what the full title is. This movie is really different. Less, I think, of a content-based storyline. There's not a huge story to it, but it's definitely something there's a lot of content within the characters, stuff going on. Essentially, it's about a man who is in a psychiatric hospital. He comes out of the hospital and has to kind of adapt back to society. Really interesting movie, different than anything I've ever watched, and I think more real, a more realistic version. Next show I would 100% recommend, and I will always 100% recommend, is Lucifer. You've probably heard of it. I think most people have heard of it. Incredible show, so funny, one of my favorite things ever. I've watched all of it. If you haven't heard of it, essentially it is about the devil, and he decides he likes it on Earth, so he comes and he decides to live on Earth, and he owns a club, or a nightclub called Lux, and he basically just lives the good life. But then he meets a cop, and he kind of works side by side with her, and they solve the case. So then he becomes a, what are they called, a compliant? Is that what they're called for the police? Anyway, that 100% always will recommend. A fun movie is Game Night. It's essentially about a couple who does game nights quite often, and one night the husband's brother decides to kind of one-up him and host his own game night, and it just kind of takes some twists and turns and gets a little too real. There's a couple plot twists in this movie. It's really funny and interesting to watch. Yeah, just kind of one of those good entertainment movies. Another movie similar to that in the type of movie it is Tag. Tag is essentially about a group of 5 best friends who have been playing the same game of tag since they were 8 or 9 years old, and they've continued it all the way up into their adult years, and it's really, really funny. So they do that, and but one thing that's really, really cool about the Tag movies, it's based on true stories. So there actually was a group of men who did continue playing the same game of tag since they were young, and I think that is so crazy and spectacular, and that's one of those things that now I'm oh my god, I want to start doing that. And it's a really, really funny movie. Another one of my favorite movies is Baby Driver. I just think it's really, really well filmed, good movie. Anyway, basically he is a kid who his parents died, and he doesn't have a lot of money, and he works for this basically this guy who puts together heists, and he hires people, and so Enzel basically drives the getaway car, which is really cool. And so it's kind of like Fast and Furious and a money heist movie put together. So it's really, really interesting. It's got great actors, good drama, great soundtrack, fantastic soundtrack. The next movie I would suggest is The Edge of 17 if you are a teenager. More so girls, but guys too. You can likely connect with the main character or one of the characters really well. I think this movie did a really great job of portraying what teenagers go through, and their moods and their attitudes, and just situations that they do go through. So I think it was really interesting to watch, because I was connecting with the character, and I was wow, I feel that, or wow, that's really cool. So it was definitely it's a really funny movie. The next show is actually not a full show. It is a limited series. It is a Netflix original. It is, as I was saying, it is one of my hands down favorite pieces of cinematography. The filmography in the show is fantastic. As I was saying, it was beautifully done and just incredibly amazing. So essentially When They See Us is about 5 boys who are wrongfully incarcerated and convicted of a rape of a woman in Central Park, and they became known as the Central Park 5. Later the right guy. The guy who actually did it came forward and confessed to it, and they were all exonerated. It is a true story, and I think the director, Ava, did a fantastic job retelling the story. I'm pretty certain that she worked closely with the actual men involved. The entire thing was so well done. You're able to really feel the emotions of the characters. You really feel a lot of emotions yourself, and it's a really eye-opening series to watch. The next limited series I would suggest to you guys, again, fantastic, another Netflix original, but 100% one of my all-time favorite, again, pieces of cinematography. I am a sucker for well-filmed things. I really notice when there's work put in to the film. It is about a girl who is raped, and the police that deal with her case are kind of like based on her past and based on like her statement and etc, and the evidence. They're like, maybe that didn't happen, and they don't really believe her as they should. Anyway, basically she is not really believed as she should be, and her case isn't handled as it should have been. And then we see later on when another girl is raped and two female cops team up from different districts to work the case, and we see how they handle it in a much better way, and it is a really, really interesting limited series. I highly suggest if you like Law and Order SVU, you'll probably really like this. Like I said, it's really good, and it kind of dives into like, it shows you like a lot of like kind of like real things that do happen when it comes to cases that are not the best, and opens your eyes to that kind of stuff. The next TV show that I would recommend is Kid Misconvenience. This is a more like funny, light, kind of chill show. The episodes are like 20-25 minutes long, so they're kind of short, and it is just a really funny show. Like, you could just watch it whenever. I love it. It's funny. Like I said, I like to put it on when I'm like trying to do other stuff at the same time, because it's not a show that I need to be completely like concentrated on. The next movie I would suggest is called Lost Girls, also based on a true story, also incredibly great filming, also a Netflix original. Basically, Lost Girls is about a mom whose daughter goes missing. Her daughter lives on her own, and she actually is a prostitute, and when she goes missing, the police don't really take it as seriously as they should. They're kind of like, yeah, we'll look into it, not a big deal. So the mom takes it in her own hands, and she starts investigating and looking into things, and she ends up uncovering a significant amount of more bodies. And so it's basically about this mom fighting for the truth for what happened to her daughter, and it's really, really an interesting movie. Again, really well done. I loved watching it, and I highly suggest, if you like that kind of stuff, to check it out. Another movie I really like is Save the Last Dance. It's a classic. It's funny, it's entertaining. You know, like I said, there's a little romance, a little comedy. It's got the whole package. It is essentially about a girl who is a ballerina. She wants to get into Juilliard, and her mom ends up dying, so she has to move with her dad, who lives in Chicago in kind of like a bad neighborhood per se. And so she's white, she moves to a predominantly black school. So basically she starts hanging out with these kids, and they do like a lot of like street dance, hip-hop kind of deal, and she's never done that before. That's never been like her thing. She's always done ballet, so she kind of starts, she's like a thing with this guy. Basically, he starts teaching her like how to dance and the ways, and she like meets people and she makes new friends, and it's really, really interesting, beautiful love story. It deals with interracial couple and like the stuff that like the stigma that comes along with that. So it's pretty good. I suggest. I've watched it a few times. So that is, at the moment, my... Okay, as I was saying, that is my TV show and movie English. That is my movie and TV show. That is my movie and TV show suggestions for you guys to watch on Netflix during quarantine. If you've watched any of these, let me know what you thought of them. If you go ahead and watch any of these, let me know what you thought of them. And if you have any movie or TV show suggestions for me, let me know, because I'd love to check them out. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. You guys know the drill. Peace out.